girlfriends. Welcome to another episode of Girlfriends and Goals. We're your hosts, Miosha
and Samaria.
This podcast is a space where we'll talk about friendships, life goals, a little bit of pop culture, and all things womanhood.
All right, so we're going to get this episode started with our segment called Girlfriend Check-In. We have a question here from We're Not Really Strangers, and the question is, what do you crave more of? So, Miosha, let the people know. What do you crave more of?
Well, right now, what I'm craving more of is travel. And so, before the whole panorama happened, I heard someone call it that. And I'm like, I feel like I'm used to that going forward. But so before last year happened, I wouldn't say I was an avid traveler, but I definitely spent a good portion of 2018 and 2019 traveling, which I guess in hindsight was a good thing because I got to see a lot of the places that I wanted to see, but I still have a lot more places that I want to go to. So I haven't been able to take any big trips. I wouldn't even say like full vacations. I've just been taking like road trips to see family and friends, trying to catch up, just from last year. And then I also did recently have a small child. So that also kind of complicates the whole traveling right now as well. So I crave traveling, more specifically, international traveling, a nice beach vacation. I'd take anything right now.
She said, get me out of here.
Get me out of here. What about you?
So I think I am craving more free time. I feel like my time is very like I always have something to do. Even when I decide, okay, I'm not gonna do it, it's like it's still there looming, you still know you have to come back to it. So that is what I'm craving more of. It's just a free time to just be. So I'm looking forward to the holidays because I think that'll be a good time for me to just like exist and reflect and just be. So that's what I want.
I feel you on that. I'd say that would be a very strong second for me. I find that even when I do have those free moments, I'm thinking about what I should be doing, even if it's not urgent. It could be something as simple as, oh, you need to like unload the dishwasher or work on the show notes or something. Like I have those moments and they're short and not as frequent, but it's like, dang girl, just calm down and enjoy the free moment because obviously the time will quickly come when you need to be being productive and doing something. So I definitely feel you on
and
that.
I feel like that's the thing. I feel like everything that I have to do right now is urgent. One, because it is like I literally have a conference in 13 days and so I'm trying to get all my prep together for that, and it's like 2 presentations that I have. So stuff is really urgent and I'm just looking forward to that being done. And then after that, it's getting my students' grades out and making sure I complete my PhD semester successfully. So I'm really looking forward to December. Also, it's going to be my birthday. I'm not doing anything for it. I don't even know if I'm really looking forward to it this year, but it'll be time that I don't have to focus on other things.
And the Christmas breaks, I feel like when you're in academia are legit breaks, like Thanksgiving, spring break. Those are all a joke because you do have those professors who expect you to have an exam or paper something as soon as you come back. So you can't really enjoy the break.
Yes.
But we're going to jump right into today's topic, which is the independent woman. And I feel like because we have a podcast talking about womanhood and ambition, it's almost a must that we have to cover this topic. And it's one of those topics where I feel like it's always looming or being talked about on social media. It's one of those things where I feel like people are also very vocal about how they feel about a woman being independent. There's always a conversation of, should a woman be more independent, less independent? Someone's always talking about what women should be doing. And
always in women's business.
Always. And it's also very polarizing where I feel like there's like 2 camps and people tend to be like all in, it's not one of those topics where I personally think where people are kind of willing to just see it down the middle. There seems to be a great divide, but as we kind of go through the topic, we'll see if Samira and I are aligned on that. But I wanted to kick off and ask you, Samaria, do you think the independent woman or Miss Independent has a negative or positive connotation in society? And if so, why?
So I think a lot of times, okay, it depends on who you ask. I think negative in the sense that, like, ever since Destiny's Child came out with that song, I think certain men have just been like, oh my gosh, the independent woman is this or that. So I think, like, to some men, it is like viewed negatively, right?
Hmm.
But I think if you would ask certain women, they might be like, hey, I think that's a good thing. Like, I would want to be. Um, but I don't think, still, like, it's not down the middle. Men think one way and women think another way, because I know some women who are just like, why is that even necessary? And some men who
Hmm.
think, hey, this is absolutely necessary. So I don't mean to like make it seem like men think one way and women think another, but I guess it's both. It has both a negative and a positive connotation. I started off by thinking negative, but
Hmm.
as I talked, I was like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so my answer is both. I think that you're right. There's a group of people, not by gender
Mhm.
or sex. I think some people feel one way, some people feel the other. But I like how you called out Destiny's Child and how people have just been like, ah, these, they think that it's such a bad thing, a woman being independent. But in more recent times, because that's an old song, you see men who've had songs like Neo and Lil, Boosie or whatever, Miss Independent, so I think that some people think it's a good thing, some people think it's a not so good thing. And I think it's just kind of split and it just depends on who you ask.
Yeah, I kind of feel a way though. Like Destiny Shaw was saying, kind of the same thing, but now that like Neo and like you said, Boozy and Webby, was it Boozy and Webby made that song? It was
Hmm.
somebody else. It wasn't just Boozy. But yeah,
Hmm.
now that they like made that song, it's like, oh, this is a thing. But I think the only thing that maybe Destiny's Child said that could have rubbed people the wrong way is like, only ring your celly when I'm feeling lonely. So maybe it made men feel like objects, perhaps. I don't want to put words in their mouths, but maybe that's how it made them feel. And that's why that particular song wasn't the best representation to
Hmm.
some men and or some women, of what the independent woman is. But what, I guess, what do you think an independent woman is? What is the independent woman to you?
Yeah, so I think for me, the independent woman term is kind of a twofold thing. I think there is a piece of it that encompasses a woman being able to be self sufficient and taking care of herself financially, just being a self sufficient person. But I also think that it's a woman who's in the position to make her life whatever it is that she wants it to be.
Okay.
She's able to prioritize herself, leaning in on the word independent individual. But yeah, I think it's a mindset where it's financial, but it's also mindset. It's a twofold. It's not just one specific thing. And for me, I think society focuses heavily on the money and provision side of it
Okay.
in in that, oh, you're independent, so that means you're able to take care of yourself. But I personally think it's a bit broader than that. It's more than just the financial piece. What about you?
Okay. So I would have focused more on the financial. So I'm curious about this like mindset that you were
Hmm.
mentioning, because I think for me, I would have said, oh, just someone who's able to be self-sufficient, like she's able to survive mostly by herself without needing money from parents, family, friends, or significant other. So I
Hmm.
focus heavily on the financial, but what do you mean by like the mindset of it? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'd think of a woman who's able to prioritize her own wants and needs and making her life whatever it is that she wants it to be. Um, I think of a woman who is very individualistic. Um,
Huh.
so I think the finance piece is there. But when I think independent, I don't just think money. I think it's her way of moving throughout life, the decisions that she makes, how she's making them, not just her being self sufficient, even though it is a part of it.
That is so interesting to me because I think when I think about the independent woman, I still see dependence in certain ways. so
Well, yeah.
so maybe
Yeah.
that's why I only focused on the financial part. But I'm like, okay, well, you can't. Well, maybe you can, but just this is my vision. Like, you can't independently like deal with all your emotional needs and wants.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I think when people society talks about the independent woman, they usually talk about it in terms of like relationship, like romantic relationship. So if a woman is independent, they're like, oh, you're not depending on your significant other. But what if she has a father who, like she needs to come and fix things? That's her being dependent. She's still
Hmm.
self-sufficient. She might still be able to take care of herself. Like she could pay somebody to do it possibly, but because she has this family member and or friend close to her, she's going to depend on them.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of my vision. Like independent, yes, but yeah, maybe that's why I focus only on financial because I just see dependence in other ways. So maybe that's a way of thinking that I need to challenge myself on. But
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I think for me, my point of view is I think just a little bit different, maybe just because I'm at a different stage in life. I
hmm,
think as far as like, I'm married now. And so one of the questions that we were going to get to, I think we're just jumping just a little bit ahead, is has anyone ever encouraged you to be more or less independent? And so for me, I didn't have a specific instance of like someone telling me to be more or less independent, but I do think that when I was in the process of getting married, so I guess like the engagement time period, I
uh-huh.
did kind of go through this shift of being very individualistic in my way of thinking to understanding like now I'm partnering with a person. And so if you were to ask me before, I'd be like, yeah, like I'm an independent person, not just because I'm self-sufficient from a financial standpoint, because even when you're married, you can still be self-sufficient from a financial standpoint. So I guess for me going through that process, it was more so my way of thinking and my mindset. I didn't see myself as this independent individual anymore. I'm like, oh, I'm transitioning into a different portion of my life where different people or things will have to be prioritized above just all of my individual wants and needs.
Interesting. So by that way of thinking, do you do you think that
Mhm.
like married women shouldn't lean on this like independent woman image so much?
Yeah, so I think because I encompass mindset as well as financial provisions in it,
Hmm.
I think it just depends on the person that you're with.
Okay.
If you're married to a person who doesn't mind you being very individualistic in the decisions that you make, in maybe maybe being more understanding of things being about how you want them to be and maybe not as collaborative or
Okay.
being willing to compromise on certain things, I think that it could work. But I personally believe that when you are married, that individual or independent component does shift. It's different. I can't say that for some people, they don't enjoy it, they don't like it. Some people do. But I just think that there's a mindset shift. And I wouldn't necessarily classify um, a woman, this is just from my perspective, as
Yeah, yeah,
being
yeah.
independent. Because like I said, whether you're working or not, educated or not, that aside, I personally think it just depends on your mindset and how you're approaching life now that
Mhm.
you are married. Um, so yeah, I think it just depends. What about you?
Yeah, so I think this whole mindset, like you said, collaborative, right?
Hmm.
And so I think for me, as an unmarried woman, I do still see that collaborative mindset. And so I think when the time comes for me to say join with someone else, I might still be like, oh, I don't know if I would say, oh, I'm an independent woman, but I might still see myself as independent because for me, being independent doesn't necessarily mean like you can't lean on others or that you are so individualistic. I think
Hmm.
even decisions that I have made throughout my adulthood have been with other people in mind. So I think it might be cultural, just to like point that out. So there wouldn't be as much of a mindset change, I think, for
Hmm.
me in like a permanent relationship, like a marriage.
Yeah, I think I think of it more so from the standpoint of before you, and this is just an example,
Yeah,
say
yes.
before you do decide to partner with a person long term, there are certain things that you may not factor in about how they feel about a decision that you're going to make,
Got you.
mainly because they're not a fixed element in your life, and you just might have to do what you need to do, what's best for you.
Yeah, yeah.
During that time, you're prioritizing yourself. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It
Right.
just may have to be, it is what it is.
Mm.
Um, however, once you do decide, like, hey, I'm going to move forward in life as, a partner,
Mhm.
it could be sometimes just very complicated and tumultuous to maybe not factor in that person on certain decisions. So I'm not talking about being in alignment on everything because you're still a separate person.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think that it just makes life easier once you've merged if you're in alignment. And
Yeah.
that yearning to be in alignment with a person when you're not married, I think it just shifts.
Yeah, I'm curious what our audience is going to think. I can't wait to ask it on Instagram like later on
Mhm.
this week because I am curious like if married women would still see themselves as an independent woman or if it's more of okay, no, like that kind of had to change.
You know, I also think that I think both men and women,
Mhm.
when you're married or not, you depend on each other in different
Yeah.
ways. Like you said, the example of maybe depending on a father or depending on other people in your life to get things done.
Mhm.
Um, I think I was more so focused on as being a young woman and being independent,
Yeah.
maybe not being married, how you prioritize certain things in your life and just how that shifts when you do become married. So that's why I wouldn't classify a married woman and a young woman who's not married yet as both independent women. Maybe they are independent, but independent in different ways.
Okay,
Can't
so
just like put them
independent.
in the same bucket.
Yeah, so like independent woman can mean different things depending on your stage in life. I
Hmm.
think that's so interesting because we talked about Destiny's Child, and then later on they made that song "Cater to You," and like 2/3 of them are married and have families and stuff like that. And I'm like, would we consider them still like independent women, or has that changed because of their status change? So I think that's an interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to ask it on Instagram just to see what people think.
Yeah. Also, what's interesting too is how, even within society, I think they focus on the mindset, but it's also the financial piece too.
Hmm.
When I've heard people, I guess, talk about being Miss Independent as a negative thing,
Yeah.
I think they've been focused on the mindset, but it's also somewhat connected to, I think, being able to be self-sufficient. So it's very much, I think, connected.
Hmm.
It's a topic that has a lot of nuance. It's not just like one easy answer.
Yep, that's true. So what do you think the pros and cons of being an independent woman are?
Yeah, so I'd say that the pros are you have more opportunities to have your life to be what exactly you want it to be, to build a life that's most fulfilling to you. You have more options. You may don't feel as boxed in. Um, and you're just able to really prioritize you. That's not to say that you don't think about how obviously it's going to affect people around you, but I think depending on your stage in life, I think we're mainly talking to young women. Um, you're really able to cultivate the life that you want and how you want it to be, and you may don't feel those pressures to maybe go after certain things or not do certain things just because you're in that space where it's kind of all about you. I'd say a con is that people don't run to help you. They think, "Oh, girl, you got it. You
Hmm.
good. You seem to have figured it all out." So people may not be as open and willing to either give help. Not to say that they don't want to. I think they just can make the assumption if you just seem like, "Oh, well, I have it all together."
Okay. Interesting. I think a pro is self-sufficiency, that you are able to afford the things that you want, the things that you need, and you don't necessarily have to rely on other people because, people, even those who love you the most or have your best interest at heart, people can be flaky. So if you have the means to be able to do for yourself, I think that is a huge pro of being, independent. And you don't have anybody holding it over your head when they do something for you. So I think that's one of the biggest flexes of being independent. It's like nobody can say, "Oh, well, you needed me for XYZ," even though they shouldn't, but you know how people are, they do it anyway. So yeah, I think that is a huge flex that comes with being independent. Um, and that's interesting because on this season of Married at First Sight, there's this couple where the woman makes more than the man. And in the beginning, they kind of painted her as materialistic. Like she's like, "I love my shopping. I'm not willing to change that for anybody. I love my expensive shoes, my bags, my closet has to be stacked, whatever." And so they painted her in that way. But come to find out, when they each show their financial statements to the other, she's been saving a whole lot of money. So all of her money isn't just squandered on those things. It's like she says she shops like 2 or 3 times a year and does a lot of shopping, spends a lot of money, but most of the year she's saving.
Mm.
And that's not something that she wants to change in her future. So she doesn't feel like a man should come into her life and be like, well, now you have to not spend because she can afford it. And so
Mhm.
that's like the biggest, I think, flex is you can come in my life and, there are certain things I have to adapt to having a husband and all of that, but I make enough money to do this and save a good portion. So who gonna check me, boo? So I think that's such a huge flex. Now
And
oh, go
And
ahead.
I'll add to like the obvious, if she were the man and say her habit was cars or whatever, this wouldn't even be a topic of discussion. So,
At all, and she probably wouldn't be telling him, "Oh no, you need to save more, you need to," it just wouldn't be a thing. So I do love that for her, that she's not just this materialistic person, but she understands like, hey, there is more to life, there are other things, and I'm also prioritizing those other things. It's not just shopping for me. So I love
mhm.
that for her. A con that I would say kind of has to do with, it's similar to your help thing that you mentioned, but it's that you don't know when or how to ask for help. So I ran into
Mhm.
like a few of my friends who are like this, and they don't know when to ask or when to accept it. So it's like you could be out here literally drowning in work and all of that stuff, and you wouldn't even think to ask somebody, "Hey, can you just take this task off of my plate?" Or when someone does offer, you have the tendency to be like, oh no, I got it, just because you're so used to having everything. You're so used to, the fact that you actually do got it most of the
Mhm.
time, that you don't know how to accept help. And so I think that's a danger in
Mhm.
like this Miss Independent mindset. Even though I am fully in support of it, I am aware, like you said, there's nuance to it. And I am aware that that's something that it can cultivate, is this attitude of, okay, well, I'm not going to ask for help,
Mhm.
or they offer to help. So, I'm not, but I'm not going to accept it.
Mhm.
And so I think it's like, yes, you can do a lot of things, maybe everything by yourself, but if you don't have to, I think we do need to learn to give ourselves a break, and
Yeah.
be able to lean on others who are willing to be there. Like, yeah, I can change the windshield wipers on my car, but if you're here and you can do it too, then, oh, now I can sit down and have a cup of tea, or now I can watch my favorite show while you do that, because now
Mhm.
I don't have to. So that's the only thing that I feel like is a con, and possibly a danger of the Miss Independent mindset.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing I was thinking of is I feel like sometimes men, they may see, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is just based off of my experience, where they see the independent woman or being too
Mhm.
independent as a con when it comes to being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the confidence that comes with that, but I don't know. It's always interesting to me because the part about being self-sufficient, it's just like, if that's a con,
Mhm.
like, what planet are you living on?
Yeah.
Like, that's the only, like, most of us aren't going from, "Oh, I went from my dad's house to go be with this guy now." Like,
Mhm.
most of us are spending time as individuals, as young adults, living on our own, making, kind of paving our own way. So it's just like, is it such a con that we as women are going through the process of being self-sufficient
Yeah.
and, quote unquote, having our own? Well, most of us don't have a choice. Like, if you're not a trust fund kid, or you have a very rare situation where you meet your spouse at 18 and you run off and get married,
Mhm.
um, I just don't think that they're being as realistic when they see that as a con,
Yeah.
when it's like you have to factor in the times that we're in and the life experience of most women.
Yeah, and this kind of takes me back to Marlissa's episode where it's called Getting Married Late, for those of you who might be new to the podcast. Hey. But she was just talking about how people would find her intimidating because, she had all these things, and someone specifically said to her, "Oh, you don't need me. Like, you have everything." And it's like, what do you expect me to do? I'm in my later 30s. At this point, do you expect me to be out here just waiting for you to come and take care of all of my needs? Like, I wanted a home, so I got a home. I wanted this car, so I got it. And that shouldn't be a problem. I don't understand why that's intimidating. Maybe you should
Right.
step your game up. I mean,
Well, it's like, what it sounds like is that you're expecting women to sit back and twiddle their thumbs
until you come.
until something happens, but that's just not realistic if you want to live a satisfying, fulfilling life.
Right.
And that looks different for each person, but I just don't know how you're surviving out here without being self-sufficient. I just think that, some people on the internet just need to take a step back and just be realistic about the experiences of most people. If we were in a time where, um, maybe we didn't have that in between period of being
Mm,
an individual, then maybe that makes sense.
yeah.
But that time is long past.
It is. It is. How do you But how do you feel about this idea of like, oh, I don't need a man? Because when I hear men talking about the issues that they have with independent women, that's the first thing that they go to. It's like, I don't need a man. So what do you think about that? I shouldn't say it in that voice. I'm not trying to make fun.
I don't know if my perspective is different because I'm married. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to think about this, my time period, maybe before I was, just to
Okay.
have like a fair comparison.
Misha's like, I have to go way back into the
No,
archives.
it's not that I have to go way back. It's just that we have listeners at different points in life.
True.
So I would say me at 25, I can't say that I would be against saying like I don't need a man in a romantic way or to be self-sufficient, because at that time I didn't. In my early 20s, I was just excited to, be out of college, live my
Mhm.
best life, travel, if I met someone great, if not, I'm good because I'm going to make the most out of life anyways. So yeah, at that time I would say I didn't feel like I necessarily needed, a man in certain ways.
Yeah.
But at this point in my life as a mother, I do. As,
Mhm.
a woman that's married, I do. And I would even say back then, even when I was dating, I would say, yeah, like I did, looking back, I did need a guy like, oh, I'm about to go get my car worked on, or I have certain questions about certain things I just don't know, I haven't experienced. Like, it's great to have a man there, even to like be personal protection, like if you're in
Mm.
a crazy situation. So at the time, I would have said no, but looking back, I did. There were certain
Hmm.
situations where I feel like I was very thankful that a man was there.
Got you. Yeah, I think this whole concept of I don't need a man is only referred to romantic. Like, just because someone says I don't need a man, that doesn't mean they don't need men at all. Because I think, and this isn't for every woman, but like sometimes if something needs fixing, or if I have questions, like I have an uncle who lives pretty far away, and whenever something like goes awry, I'm like, let me call him and just see, what he thinks about this. Like after I've YouTubed a ton, and thank God for the internet, and Googled, quite a bit, I'm like, let me just call him to see. So I still like need, I don't want to phrase it as, oh, I just need men, even though I do. Like, I don't have a problem with phrasing it that way, but I just want to phrase it in terms of I need someone who has this expertise. And if it's a
Mhm.
man, then absolutely, I do need a man in that case. And there's no problem with that.
So maybe I'm out of touch here, but when I hear women say, at least nowadays, that they don't need a man,
Mhm.
I think it's that their way of saying that I'm not thirsty for a man. Like
Okay.
I'm not just gonna take anything or
Period.
whatever I yeah. So I guess that's how I see it. They're not being literal. It's more so like I'm not thirsty out here. I'm not parched.
Mhm. But do you think I'm just trying to see it from the other side, but do you
Mhm.
think that could possibly, just because you are saying the words I don't need a man, do you think that does hurt, have the ability to hurt men's feelings out here? I mean, obviously it does because they do be hurt, but
Um, hurt their feelings. I don't know. I'm maybe not the best person to answer that question because I think when a man really wants you, he doesn't care what's coming out of your mouth. He's determined. So you may say,
interesting.
I don't need a man, or I don't like you. They
Yeah, I
still
don't
they
think
still
that
might
would
try.
deter. I do agree. Like, I don't think that would deter a man who was really like
Yeah.
interested in you. I think he might be like, oh, well, don't you think, and try to get you to see it in a different way.
Hmm.
But that might not be all the time. Like, there could be good men who are just like, I did want you, but that was such a turn off for me. So it's hard to say with 100% certainty that everybody feels that way. But
Hmm.
I just have seen enough instances where it doesn't seem like a man who's super interested would be like, oh, this is the one red flag. Let me just throw this person away.
So I wanted to ask you, has
Mhm.
anyone ever tried to encourage you to be more or less independent? So I kind of gave my answer earlier, which
Yeah.
was that I couldn't think of an instance, but I did have somewhat of a mind shift once I decided to get married. But for you, has anyone been like, girl, you were just doing the most out here?
Yes. So when I was like 17, 18, working my first job, I remember this kid who I was working with. He wasn't a kid, he was older than me, child. I'm calling him a kid. Like I wasn't the baby of the group. But like I was doing something and he was like, "Oh, let me help you." And I was like, "Oh no, like I can do it." Mainly because I really felt like I could do it and I was so close to getting it done that I'm just like, I want the satisfaction of being able to do this thing.
Mhm.
And he said, "Man, I've noticed that you hate accepting help." And yeah, he was so bold, right?
Dang.
I was like, I don't think that's the case. I was all defensive. I know that's not the case. And he had examples of why it was.
He
And so
like,
in
girl,
that
I've
moment,
been watching you.
okay, let's have receipts, honey, before having receipts was a thing. Um, so yeah, I think in that moment I did realize, maybe I am kind of like that. So maybe I need to be less so. But I think the other person who's told me that I'm doing the most is probably myself because I have realized like over time, hey, chill a little bit. Like
Mhm.
give other people the opportunity to have you. And
Yeah, I've even encouraged you to do that throughout our
yeah,
friendship.
yeah, and I think it is because like something that you said, like, oh, people might not rush to give you help if they see that you got it. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. But also I realized that certain people were depending solely on me. And at a certain point, I had so many plates up in the air that I couldn't juggle everything. And I was like, no, I need to start asking for help. I need to start, you know, using the resources that are available to me because I'm sure the people who are around me and who love me wouldn't mind because every time
Mhm.
that I have asked them, they've tried to make a way. So why not rely on them more if I have so much on my plate? And now I'm at a place where I'm like, I don't even have to have so much on my plate. Like, who can I delegate this to? Because I don't want to reach that place of being overwhelmed again. So
Mhm.
yeah, I have encouraged myself to do a little bit less. So to close out, I would like to know what advice do you have to young women out here who are being Miss Independent, want to be Miss Independent, dealing with the stigmas of being Miss Independent? What advice do you have?
Yeah, so for young women, I'd say don't worry about the stigmas.
Mm,
Um, I just think it's unrealistic that, at least from the finance portion, that it's unrealistic that you wouldn't be able to be self-sufficient for a period of time.
yeah.
And I don't know if this is just me having the glass half full mindset on this, but I think every person has the ability, if they put their mind to it, it's something that they want to do.
Hmm.
Even if it's a shift in your situation, everyone has the ability to be self-sufficient or to put efforts to be in that position,
Yeah.
even if you aren't current in that position, because as last year showed us, like things can happen so fast. So whatever your situation is today, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way tomorrow and going forward. And
Yes.
so yeah, I just say never mind the stigmas. In today's time, people, women specifically, will be self-sufficient financially.
Yeah.
As far as the mindset standpoint, I would just say if you do aspire to be married and have a family, I'd say enjoy that time period of being an individual, operating where you're putting your needs, your wants, your desires first, really prioritizing yourself within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
But enjoy that time because if you do aspire to have a family, that will likely shift at different points in time for different reasons. So enjoy that season, life will evolve and shift. And yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would say I think it's fine to be, the independent woman. I don't think you should wait around for a spouse. I'm specifically talking about like romantically. But yeah, I don't think you need to wait around for a spouse to do things that you really want to do. So if
Mhm.
you want a house and you can afford it, um, go ahead and buy the house because that's what you want. I would hate for you to be waiting around forever just to do something you really want, when this person might not come for another few years, or the right person might not come for another few years. So go ahead and be independent if that's what you want to be. I would also just caution, to make sure that you ask for help. If you need help, don't think you have to do it all alone, especially when you're facing difficulties. It's okay to ask for help. And if you ask for help and somebody says no, it's okay to ask somebody else for help. Like, do not let that deter you, because at the end of the day, you need to accomplish what you need to accomplish. So if you don't have all the resources, the time, the knowledge to do it yourself, then you need to make life easier on you by asking somebody else. So if someone says no, ask the next person. All right.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Girlfriends and Goals podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do that now. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like this video. Also, our time together does not have to end here. You've heard our thoughts on this topic, but we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So make sure you follow us on Instagram at Girlfriends and Goals Podcast, where we'll continue this conversation throughout the next week. Until next time, bye.
Bye.